It's an amazing movement that's definitely global. It's reading, and it's Global Read Aloud, and that's what we're talking next.
On the Bedley Brothers with my brother Scott. And I'm Tim. Thanks for tuning in. And today we have a special guest with us, one of my all-time edu hero favorites. You guys all know who she is. It's Pernille Ripp. Thanks for coming on the show, Pernille.
Excited to be here.
All right. She is a 7th grade teacher from Oregon, Wisconsin. I was a little confused by that. You have a state and inside of a state, I guess, there in Wisconsin. And she has a website, Blogging Through the Fourth Dimension, that can be found at hername.com. And, of course, she is the founder of the now famous Global Read Aloud. How many years has that been going now?
6th year this year.
6th year. Awesome. Why don't you tell us about it, how it got started, and what it's all about?
Sure. Well, the Global Read Aloud supposedly started with a drive listening to NPR on a beautiful summer night in 2010. Now, supposedly because my husband says that this didn't actually happen, but I'm the one that created it, so I get to have the origin story that I choose. But we were driving down the road listening to NPR, and I heard Neil Gaiman being mentioned, and being a huge Neil Gaiman fan, I turned it up. And they were talking about the One Book, One Twitter book club that was happening that summer, where people had chosen American gods, and then they'd created a hashtag, and people around the world were using Twitter as their book club. So in my story, I said somebody should do that for kids, and his response was, well, why don't you? I don't know anymore if that is true, but that's how I remembered it. And that night I went home and I wrote a blog post and suggested to the world, how about some sort of a global read aloud where we pick a book and we share with students around the world using technology such as a wiki, because I had just learned about wikis, and so I thought that that would be the coolest way to collaborate. Now, knowing wikis, I would never use a wiki to collaborate with people around the world.
Pernille, did you see that wiki video where they're like, this is a wiki? No.
Yeah, I had read a book for class, and we loved wikis, and I loved wikis, and the wiki still exists. I don't think it's used much anymore, but that's really how it started. I had no idea what I was doing. I tweeted out the blog post, and a couple of people that were a lot more connected than I was, like Lisa Dabbs and Jerry Cyberryman, retweeted it, and all of a sudden people were like, that sounds great. Where do we sign up? And I had no idea. So that was how the Global Read Aloud started. It was a very organic process, and really was just me fumbling in the dark trying to make it work. And so that first year we ended up sharing the Read Aloud of the Little Prince, which was one of my favorite books growing up. And we had about, and I always screw up the numbers, it was like 300 students maybe. It was very small. But I say that now, like at the time, 300 students was amazing and crazy to think about, that they were sitting you know, somewhere else in the world having the same read aloud experience. And I remember how profound it was for my students to know this. And we usually we shared in whichever ways we could, and when it was done I was like, that was great, we're done. But then the people who had participated said, so when do we do it again? And I took a deep breath and I said, well, how about next year? so that's really the story. And so every year it has just grown and gotten bigger by word of mouth. Every year more people become very passionate about it. And so it has changed and evolved, and yet it has stayed the same, because it's really still just about sharing an amazing book with kids around the world, and then using some sort of tool, technology or not, to connect with others and have this shared experience.
Pernille, do you have any favorite stories of classes connecting and that you've either heard or you experienced with your own classes?
I think some of the stories that I've heard, especially, have been from the teachers that have taken the time to tell me that the Global Read Aloud really made an impact in a certain student's life. For example, I know there's been a lot of stories of students who didn't see themselves as readers or writers, and all of a sudden, through the Global Read Aloud, they found their own voice. I love the stories that teachers share about the differences that they make. For example, when we did The One and Only Ivan, and that was before it won the Newbery. It was a relatively, little known book at the time. We did it and loved it. And the summer that it had been selected, Ivan, the real gorilla, had died. And a lot of us chose to withhold that from our students as we were, reading this book. And it wasn't until the end that we shared that with them. And so some classes decided to gather money to send to Zoo Atlanta, where Ivan was, in honor of his life and also in honor of the Global Read Aloud. Within my own community, I think it's the little moments, the ones where the students all of a sudden realize that what they're saying is being read by other students, and that other students around the world share the same opinions as them, even if their daily lives look completely different. I always appreciate the teachers that reach out and tell me how big of a difference it made to have a community that would give them some sort of courage to try new things. I'm very proud of the Global Read Aloud because there's so many incredible people doing it that make it better every single year.
And can you tell us about how it's grown over the years in terms of the impact on students and teachers?
Sure. So that first year, like I said, I think it was about 300 kids sharing one book. And I think we had someone in Canada. We had one person in France. I remember that. The second year, we decided to grab 2 books instead of 1, just to have a broader spectrum. And that year, 3,000 students participated. The following year, we expanded once more and added a picture book study. I think it was either the 3rd or the 4th year. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was the 4th year. But the 3rd year, all of a sudden, we had 30,000 students participate. And then it became, we added the picture book author component. The first year we did was Eric Carle, and it was just amazing to see. We also added another book for more mature audiences. And that year we were at 114,000. And then last year we added yet another book. And so 4 chapter books plus the picture book author study with the amazing Peter Reynolds. And I stopped counting at 310,000. And that number is still incredibly surreal to me. We had more than 60 different countries represented on 6 different continents. I couldn't keep up with the hashtag on most days, and the amazing things that people were sharing and creating just blew me away. Last time I checked, which was last night, signups for this year is at 330,000 students, and October 5th is still 2 months away, so we'll see.
Oh man, that's awesome! What a great accomplishment. Okay, so tell us about this year's books, since we have you here, and why. My class is going to be doing Fish in a Tree, but tell us about this year's books. I'm excited about this year's. I love last year's, and really excited about this year's.
I feel like every year gets harder to choose because every year it's so good. So I have this complete moment of panic before I hit the publish button on the final choices. And I like to say that people vote and it's a democratic process, and it is up to a certain point, but ultimately I have to make the final decision because sometimes you just have to go with a gut feeling. Like The One and Only Ivan, when the year that was selected, it was not the winner. Bridge to Terabithia was. And so every year I fudge the numbers just a little bit, and every year it seems to have worked out. But that's a secret between us, of course.
Don't tell me. They do that for the presidential election.
Go with your gut feeling for the president instead. This year it really came down to, there were a couple of things that I felt that the project really needed to be truly considered global. And the biggest thing for me was that we needed a book from a non-US author. And so thankfully I have a lot of people that I can ask for opinions. And Fish, one of the books that was selected by Ellis Matthews, who's really Laura Drone, is a book out of England. And it was a book suggested by people, and I read it and I fell in love with it because it just has such a universal message of the journeys that we take. And I read it as a read aloud to my 7th graders last year because I typically read the books aloud before I select them to make sure that they're a good read aloud. And the conversations that happened around the book were really profound for my 7th graders. And she's just an amazing character as well, and she's excited to be a part of it. Fish in a Tree was another new one for us because we've never had a repeat author. Linda Mullally Hunt wrote one for the Murphys last year and put her heart and soul into the project. I mean, I just couldn't believe how involved she was. And of course the book was amazing, and so I kept hearing rumors about this amazing new book she'd written, and I finally did one of those things that I promised I never would, but I tweeted her and I was like, is there any way I can get an advance review copy, because I'm hearing amazing things and I'd like to consider it. And she sent it to me, and I remember I read it in one night, and I looked at my husband and I said, oh, we have a problem. And he looked up and he goes, what? And I said, I think this might be the Global Read Aloud book. And he goes, well, what's the problem? I said, well, it's the same author as the last year. And he said, well, make it a contender and see how people react. And I think, you know, once it was made an official contender, it was pretty apparent that people felt the same way that I did. And to be able to welcome Linda back, you know, to the Global Read Aloud family is just amazing. It's such an incredible book, and the conversations that will surround it. For the older kids, I had read Meg Medina's Yaki Delgado Wants to Kick Your swear word, and I couldn't get it out of my mind because there are so many books on bullying out there, but not written like Meg writes her book, as far as what can really happen to someone's nature and character when they're put into a situation that's unfamiliar to them. And so it's definitely for more mature audiences. I have it in my 7th grade classroom library, and the 7th graders that have read it, you know, it's one of their all-time favorite books. And so the conversations and the change that will come from that, I think, are amazing. And then, of course, we had to have what book for the younger grades. This is always a tough one because there seems to be a hole in some way for the younger grades as far as chapter books. But being a proud Wisconsinite, Kevin Henke's The Year of Billy Miller, we needed a boy. We needed a boy protagonist, and I love the different perspectives. And then as someone pointed out, and I love people that are way smarter than me, and they always look at what I do, and they're like, oh, well, did you notice that your theme is journeys? And I thought, no, not at all, but I love that you've noticed that. And that's really true. All of the characters in our book are on some sort of journey, and so it's this very beautiful unifying theme that I had no clue actually was happening as I was selecting them. And finally, we have to have our picture books, because I'm actually doing picture books with my 7th graders this year. And the amazing Amy Cross Rosenthal, who has written so many amazing books, will be the one gracing us with her genius this year. And I can't wait, because the picture books aren't just for kindergarten or 1st graders. It's really for anybody that just wants to incorporate picture books in their classrooms.
Very cool. Yeah, I love picture books for older kids. So how does this work exactly? I mean, if you're reading The One and Only Ivan and it's Global Read Aloud Day, you can't read the whole book to your class in one day. So how does this actually roll out between the different classes, and what's actually going on? You can put kind of some flesh on it for our listeners to know what this looks like. What does it look like on the day? What does it look like leading up to it? What are they actually participating in when they participate in Global Read Aloud Day?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's not a day. It's the Global Read Aloud, and it's 6 weeks, because there is no way that you can read a book aloud in just a day. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because a lot of people think that. So thank you. Yes. People are signing up right now. The sign-ups usually open up right after the project ends for the year. And so right now, a lot of people are getting signed up, and then they're getting connected via Edmodo. And on Edmodo, we have these teacher communities set up so that you would go in and select the teacher community for your chosen book. We also have a Spanish community for those who are choosing to read the books in Spanish, and then we have a mass facilitator group for librarians or anybody who's a point person for more than one classroom. So right now, if you had just signed up, you'd be looking for your connection. And so it's a big, huge connections wanted poster session kind of going on, and people saying where they're located, how old their kids are, and also what type of tools they want to use. People usually share whether they have done the project before or if they're newbies, and then they typically share what they're looking for. I always tell people there's no wrong way to do the Global Read Aloud. There's bad ways to do it, such as reading ahead or not connecting, but really it's all about finding a way to push yourself and to integrate technology or other tools into your classroom while sharing this read aloud. And so often for newbies, they'll find one other classroom to connect with, and then they choose one or two tools to connect with that classroom during the 6 weeks. And so every week there's a certain amount of chapters that you read aloud, or with the picture book author study, there's one picture book a week. How and when you connect is really up to you. You set up that individually. There are some big project things, such as we have some Twitter hashtags, some Twitter slow chats. We have some stuff on Facebook, and the authors are also involved that everybody can get into. But really, it's up to you and your immediate connection of what you want to do. Some of the easiest tools that people use, of course, are Skype. I love Skype and everything they're doing. In fact, they're rolling out a Global Read Aloud page this year, which I'm super pumped about because they've been such a huge supporter. I know, right? Isn't that so cool? They have also they're reaching out to kind of their fold of authors, illustrators, writers, and saying, hey, we know it's not your book being read, but you want to Skype with some kids during this project because they're super into it. And then blogging has been another huge tool for people just as a platform. And then we're bringing in a tool called Write About this year too for a writing community. And by bringing in, I mean I'm using it with my kids and telling other people about it because there's no official tools. And I'm really excited to see how my 7th graders will use that tool.
Very cool.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. I did it a little bit differently last year. Actually, Joanne Fox, who's a teacher down in San Diego, and was on like kind of this sabbatical to plan this amazing school that they're opening this year. She was missing being in the classroom, and I said, why don't you do the Read Aloud, the Global Read Aloud to my students? And then we connected with the class up in Canada and stuff like that. So I thought it was fun to give it somebody who was out of the classroom, who was longing for that like connection with kids and to be able to have that, to give her a chance. And she was fantastic. I mean, she's an amazing teacher, but it was fantastic to do it that way. And then I got to actually sit and listen to the story as a audience reading, like listening to it being read aloud, which is great. Hey Tim, I think it's time.
I got one more quick question that I'm dying to.
Okay.
So now that this thing is so big, do you have authors contacting you saying, please pick my book, pick my book?
Some, but not a whole lot, although I feel like that may change a little bit because I started going to conferences, and so all of a sudden I've been living with my head in the sand for the last 5 years. I may as well admit it because I haven't gone to conferences, and so I always think of the Global Read Aloud as this little project that I do in my classroom, and yes, the sign-up sheets say that a lot of people are doing it, but you know, you can't really have a relationship with that number. But traveling this summer, and for example, meeting Scott, which was awesome, really put into perspective just how big this thing is. And so it was really interesting, for example, being at ILA, the International Literacy Association conference this summer, and a friend of mine would facilitate an introduction to an editor from a publisher, and she'd always say, oh, Pernille created the Global Read Aloud, and they would look at you and be like, oh, we want to send you books. And I was like, wait, you've heard of this random project that I've created? And so that's been really cool. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I get random packages at my school, and it's the books that authors are like, hey, check this out. I do kind of try to vet people and say, this is what we're looking for. I don't know if you can hear my 3-year-old screaming in the background, but it's bedtime. This is so a slice of my life right now. But it's really cool. For example, that's how I got my hands on Circus Mirandas by Cassie Beasley, which is one of the most phenomenal books to be published this year, and was the runner-up to what Linda Mullally Hunt ultimately took that category. But so it's starting. It's very odd.
And I think it's just cool you get to meet all these authors. You know, I love talking to authors, and I think it's been that's been one of my favorite things doing our show here, is to be able to talk to some of these authors and get inside their heads and see what, you know, how they use the creative process. So how cool, Pernille.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing is this isn't my project. I mean, granted, I'm headquarters and whatnot, but like to see all the amazing things that people do with it, and to see all the passionate people that take it and make it their own, like that's what makes me really excited, because this project isn't about Pernille Ripp. This project is about all the people that are part of it, and that's what I love, that it's really a people project and not just one person sitting and pulling the strings.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right.
I agree. That's what's great about it too. It's just it's like you put this out there and the world is like taking it where it wants to go. So that's really cool.
Right.
Well, Pernille, we want to switch gears with you right now, if you don't mind. And you're impacting the world with reading, but we're going to give you a different way to impact an individual right now. We're going to play a little game with you, if you don't mind, and it's called Rip It Good.
That's good. I like it.
Okay, so your last name is Rip, and we're going to play a little game with you about different kinds of rips. So, Scott, why don't you tell Pernille and our audience who that Pernille is going to be playing for today in our little fun game, okay?
You got it, Tim. Pernille will be competing for Bill Chamberlain. Yes, Bill William Chamberlain, a junior high teacher in Missouri. If Mrs. Ripp is able to answer 2 out of 3 questions correctly, yes, just 2 out of 3, only a 66%. So Bill will be awarded a free download of the album by the ridiculously popular rock band Rockin' the Standards.
There will be cheating, right? We're allowed to cheat?
Absolutely.
There's a chance.
We got some ripping questions here for you. And here we go with question number 1 of our Rip It Good questions is about Rip Van Winkle. As most of us are familiar with, being a reader yourself, I'm sure that you know that Rip Van Winkle fell asleep for 20 years. So the question is, when he awaked, he has missed all of the following except for which of these? Is it A?
The marriage of his daughter.
Or is it B?
The burning of his home.
Or is it C?
The death of his wife.
Now remember, Pernille, we're looking for which of these he did not miss while he was asleep for 20 years. Rip Van Winkle. So you have your 3 choices are A, the marriage of his daughter, B, the burning of his home, or C, the death of his wife. Which one do you think it is?
If I remember correctly, Rip Van Winkle is like a horribly dreadful, depressing tale about all the things that you miss out on.
Yes,
and
it
so,
is.
I'm gonna guess for sure that his wife dies. I'm pretty sure she dies, and I'm pretty sure that his house burns down too. So the only thing he didn't miss was the marriage of his daughter.
Well, actually, the correct answer is B, the burning of his home. He missed the marriage of his daughter, but not the burning of his home. I don't even know if his house got burned. So.
It should have.
Oh yeah, that's okay. But you've got 2 more chances now. You're gonna have to
Fact-checkers, check that one. Maybe it did get burned.
Right, I think so. I think the sources are wrong.
I think Pernille's getting burnt right now, Tim. This is not fair.
Okay, come on. Mr. Chamberlain's counting on you. Question number 2. Speaking of Rip, we're going to go with R.I.P. right now. I know your name's spelled R.I.P.P., but we're going to shorten that to R.I.P. Who knew cemeteries could be so funny? Which of these R.I.P., rest in peace, tombstone epitaphs are the real deal? Which one is the real deal? Is it A?
Here lies the body of Jonathan Blake, stepped on the gas instead of the brake. Thank you, Tim, for writing these questions.
Or could it be B?
Tomas Toberth? I'm not dead yet, with a small pipe protruding through the ground. These sound like they're at Disneyland or something, Tim.
Right.
Where'd you get these?
Okay.
I think Tim, all of them. I don't think any of them are real.
One of these is real, okay? Or is it C?
Rodney Dangerfield's tombstone reads, "Hey, you're standing on my grave. Still, I get no respect."
Okay, so one of these is actually real. Is it A, Jonathan Blake, who stepped on the gas instead of the brake? Is it Tomas Toberth, I'm not dead yet, with the pipe sticking up out of the ground? Or Rodney Dangerfield's, hey, you're standing on my grave, I still get no respect? Which one is it, do you think, that's actually real?
So what sound would I get if I said it's B, hypothetically?
I don't know if you would want it.
Yeah.
That
okay. All right. Nah, then
yeah.
I'm
Thinking
gonna
about
guess
it. The sound you would get might sound something like that.
It might.
It might. It just might.
Yeah. Well, I definitely don't want that then. I mean, really, Rodney Dangerfield? I know that's what he was famous for, but is that really how he wanted to be remembered the rest of his life, too? I don't know. Scott is not helping me at all.
I would say you'll probably get an A on this question once you figure out the answer.
I knew it all along. I'm pretty sure the answer is A. That sounds good.
Yes, it's a miracle. That's right. This actual tombstone is found in Niagara Falls, Canada, where it says, "Here lies the body of Jonathan Blake, stepped on the gas instead of the brake."
That is terrible.
And,
and by the way, I've missed all these too, Pernille.
Okay, good.
And Scott, just for the
record,
record,
just me that knows enough.
I'm much older than you, so that's what I want on my tombstone too, no matter how I die. Okay.
Here lies Tim Bedley. Father Tim. He stepped on the gas instead of the brake.
Woohoo!
All right, you got it.
Great. Our third and final question, no pressure, but you do need to get this one right, is about rip-offs. Rip-offs here, okay? So, you know, companies in other countries oftentimes create their own versions of popular American products and rip off consumers with something that's close. But it's rather an inferior product, right? Have you seen this before? You maybe go to Mexico. Well, you're not close to Mexico, but we see this in Mexico all the time. So we want to know which of these rip-offs actually exist. Is it A?
Maybe they just thought, close enough, when one company came out with a Batman action figure ripoff called Bratman.
Okay, or is it B?
Not sure how this got by the execs, but a My Little Pony ripoff ended up on the shelves of stores in one foreign country as the Demon Donkey.
It has to be that, because that's awesome.
And
you might be right.
C.
One ripoff computer game somehow showed Hulk Hogan, the professional wrestler, on the cover of a Star Wars game. Now, why didn't George Lucas think of that? I know why, Tim. Because that's awful.
Okay, so your choices, Pernille, are: is it the Bratman action figure, or is it the My Little Pony ripoff, the Demon Donkey, or do you think it could be Hulk Hogan on the cover of a Star Wars video game?
I really, really want it to be the Demon Donkey. I have to admit, and it's probably.
It is the Demon Donkey.
Can I buy the Demon Donkey, please?
Did you play with Demon Donkeys when you were little? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I did in Denmark.
Which foreign country was that in, Tim?
We don't know.
Okay.
We don't know where it was. But I saw the package. There's actually, if you Google that, you can see Demon Donkey, and it's got My Little Pony inside of it.
And I'm sure I just found my new book title. You know, Demon Donkey.
There you go. And the actual, there actually is a Star Wars computer game that has Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover. I don't know how that happened. But,
neither do they, Tim.
Yeah. All right, well, Scott, how did Pernille do in today's game?
Pernille, you got 2 out of 3 correct, and that's good enough to be a winner. And congratulations. You just won absolutely nothing. But Bill in Noel, Missouri, just won a free download of Rockin' the Standards album, the Edu Rocklicious music for grades 2nd through 8th.
That's awesome.
It just expanded to 2nd through 8th. All right.
Oh, well, I listen to it. I love it.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, Pernille, thanks for playing along and giving us a good laugh. I'm sure you probably didn't think it was very funny, but we thought it was hilarious.
I thought it was delightful, so thank you for inviting me on and having me talk to you guys about my passion, Global Read Aloud.
Totally. Why don't you let our listeners know how they can connect, remind them of the websites and everything so that all your new fans out there can follow up on this.
Yeah, I'll definitely be blogging about demon donkeys, so if you want to read more about that, I'm very Googleable. I mean, it's probably the easiest thing is just to Google me, Pernille Ripp, but my website, Blogging Through the Fourth Dimension, is at pernillesripp.com, and then the Global Read Aloud's website is on theglobalreadaloud.com. Twitter, you can follow me at Pernille Ripp, but I'm pretty easy to find. Or you can come to Oregon, Wisconsin, and come and see us in the classroom. That's always good.
Right on.
Swing by and maybe see Kurt Reese on the way. And
Right. There's some cool people in Wisconsin.
yeah, Wisconsin rocks.
Right.
And Scott, do you want to remind our listeners how they could get in on the Rockin' Standards Prize in the future?
Yeah, you just got to contact a future guest and beg them online, on Twitter, through email, text them, however you want. We've got some great guests coming up, and just like today, and so just look for a guest that's coming on the show.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks again, Pernille, and hope to talk to you soon. And Scott?
Thanks for watching, Mom and Dad.
Thanks for watching, Mom and Dad.
Bye.